For 3 years, my boyfriend convinced me that short hair made me better, more confident, more professional, more put together. So I cut it. Again, and again, and again. What I didn't know was that, while I was changing myself for him, he was carefully maintaining a second life I knew nothing about. And the moment I stopped cutting my hair, everything he had hidden for years began to fall apart. This isn't just a cheating story. It's a story about how control can feel exactly like love, until one small decision exposes the truth. Who I was before him. When I first met my boyfriend Arlo, my hair reached the middle of my back. It was thick, healthy, and something I had been growing since high school. I had always taken pride in it. I spent time caring for it, styling it, and making sure it looked the way I liked. My long hair wasn't just hair to me, it was part of how I saw myself. It made me feel confident, feminine, and comfortable in my own skin. Arlo noticed it immediately. He told me my hair was one of the first things he saw about me. He said it framed my face beautifully and made me look like a painting. I remember how good that compliment felt. It made me feel admired exactly as I was. At the beginning, he loved my long hair. There was no sign that anything about me needed to change. Those early months felt easy and natural. We laughed often and talked about our lives, our work, and our future plans. I felt safe in the relationship. There were no obvious red flags, no controlling behavior that stood out. If someone had told me back then that my hair would eventually become a problem, I would have laughed. About 6 months into our relationship, Arlo made his first comment about cutting my hair. It didn't sound like a demand, it sounded casual, almost thoughtful. He said short hair might suit my face better. I told him I wasn't interested. I liked my hair the way it was. He didn't push the issue. He dropped it completely. That's why it didn't feel serious at the time. But a month later, he mentioned it again. This time, he said long hair was a lot of maintenance and short hair would be easier for me. I told him I didn't mind the maintenance. Taking care of my hair was something I enjoyed. Again, he didn't argue. A few weeks later, during dinner, he brought it up again. This time, his words felt different. He said he thought I might be hiding behind my hair. He said women with short hair seemed more confident and more put together. He said they looked sophisticated. That comment stayed with me longer than I expected. At the time, I didn't fully understand why it bothered me. It wasn't rude, and it wasn't aggressive, but it planted a seed of doubt. Still, I didn't confront him. I told myself he was just sharing an opinion. Over the next few months, the comments continued. Not constantly, not aggressively, just often enough that they never fully disappeared from my thoughts. Sometimes he mentioned celebrities who looked amazing with short hair. Sometimes he said short hair would make me look more professional. Sometimes he said long hair made me look younger in a bad way. Each comment felt small on its own. Together, they slowly changed how I saw myself. I started noticing my hair differently when I looked in the mirror. For the first time in my life, I questioned something I had always loved. I replayed his words in my head without realizing it. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was hiding behind my hair. Maybe trying something new wouldn't hurt. That doubt didn't appear suddenly. It crept in quietly, disguised as self-reflection. Eventually, I decided to cut my hair to my shoulders. It felt like a safe compromise, not too short, still familiar. When Arlo saw it, he smiled and said it looked nice. Then he added, "You could go even shorter next time." A few months later, I cut it to my chin. Again, he approved. Again, he suggested going shorter. By then, the idea didn't feel extreme anymore. I was already adjusting myself based on his reactions. By the end of our first year together, my hair was cut into a pixie that barely covered my ears. Arlo loved it. He told me I looked incredible. He said this was the real me. He said I finally looked like a professional woman who had her life together. Hearing that felt like validation, like I had done something right. I didn't realize it then, but something important had changed. His approval had started to matter more than my own feelings. And that was how everything began. By the time my hair was in a pixie cut, it no longer felt like something I had chosen on my own. But I didn't realize that yet. At the time, it felt like growth, like I was becoming a more confident version of myself. Arlo made sure of that. Every compliment he gave felt like confirmation that I had done the right thing. He told me I looked incredible. He said the pixie cut made my face stand out. He said I finally looked like a woman who knew what she was doing with her life. When the person you love says things like that, you listen. You believe them. I certainly did. After that first year, keeping my hair short became routine. Every time it started to grow past my ears, Arlo would casually mention that I was due for a trim. He never demanded it. He never raised his voice. He simply reminded me, like someone pointing out an obvious fact. If I ever talked about letting it grow out, even as a joke, he would smile and say he really preferred me with short hair. He said long hair washed me out. He said it made me look younger in a bad way. He said the pixie cut made me look professional and put together. I started trusting his judgment more than my own. At some point, I stopped asking myself what I liked. I focused on what he liked. I told myself that relationships were about compromise, that it was normal to consider your partner's preferences. I didn't see it as control. I saw it as cooperation. The strange part was how normal it all felt. Friends would sometimes comment on how short my hair was, and I'd laugh and say I liked it this way. I even defended the style when people asked if I ever missed my long hair. I told them it was easier, that it suited my face better. I repeated the same reasons Arlo had given me so many times that they felt like my own thoughts. Years passed like that. 3 years of keeping my hair short. 3 years of trims scheduled around his comments. 3 years of quietly reshaping myself without ever questioning why his opinion mattered so much. Then, last spring, something small but unexpected happened. My hairstylist moved away. It wasn't dramatic. She just told me she was relocating and wouldn't be working at the salon anymore. I needed to find a new stylist, and when I called around, the soonest appointment I could get was 6 weeks away. 6 weeks didn't sound like much. I didn't think anything of it at first, but as the days passed, my hair started to grow. It grew past my ears, then to my chin, then just past my jawline, and with every inch of growth, something inside me started to shift. I didn't recognize it right away. I just knew that when I looked in the mirror, I felt different, familiar, in a way I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't even about how it looked. It was about how it made me feel. I felt like myself again. That realization scared me more than I expected. I kept telling myself it didn't matter, that I'd get it cut soon, that this was temporary. But when the appointment date came closer, I hesitated. For the first time in years, I didn't want to cut my hair. I canceled the appointment. I didn't tell Arlo. I didn't make a big announcement. I just quietly decided to let my hair keep growing. Of course, he noticed. He commented on it almost immediately. He said my hair was getting shaggy. He asked when I was planning to get it cut. I told him I had an appointment coming up, even though I didn't anymore. As the weeks passed, his comments became sharper. He said I was letting myself go. He said he missed the polished version of me. He said I looked messy and unprofessional. When I finally told him I wanted to try something different, his reaction surprised me. He got quiet. Then he got irritated. He said he really preferred me with short hair and that I should respect his preferences. When I said I had preferences too, about my own hair, he accused me of being difficult. That word stuck with me. Difficult. I had never thought of myself that way before. But suddenly, standing my ground felt like causing a problem. Still, something inside me refused to back down this time. Things were tense between us for months. We argued more, not loudly, not dramatically, but in small, uncomfortable ways. He made comments under his breath. He sighed when I mentioned my hair. He avoided talking about it directly, but the disapproval was always there. And yet, I kept growing my hair. By the time fall arrived, it was past my shoulders again. I felt beautiful in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. I styled it the way I used to. I felt confident walking out the door. That was when I decided to attend his company holiday party. It was the first work event of his I had attended in over 2 years. He usually said they were boring or not worth my time. But this year, I insisted. I wanted to meet the people he worked with. I wanted to be part of that part of his life. He agreed, but something about his reaction felt off. And that night would change everything. The night of the company holiday party arrived quietly, but I remember feeling unusually aware of everything as I got ready. I styled my hair carefully, letting it fall past my shoulders in soft waves. It felt strange and familiar at the same time, like revisiting an older version of myself. When I looked in the mirror, I felt confident, more confident than I had in years. Arlo watched me from the doorway as I finished getting dressed. He didn't compliment my hair. He didn't criticize it either. He just looked tense. There was a tightness in his posture that I couldn't explain at the time. On the drive to the venue, he was quieter than usual. His hand rested on my knee, but it felt more grounding than affectionate, like he was steadying himself. I asked him if everything was okay. He said he was just tired from work. When we arrived, the party was already in full swing. Music played softly through the room, glasses clinked, and groups of coworkers stood talking and laughing. Almost immediately, Arlo placed his hand on my back and started guiding me through the crowd. He introduced me quickly, name, brief smile, then move on. At first, I thought he was just nervous. Maybe he wasn't comfortable mixing work and personal life. I tried to brush it off. But the longer we stayed, the stranger it felt. He kept positioning himself between me and other people. When someone stopped us to talk, he answered questions directed at me before I could speak. After a few minutes, he would gently steer us away, saying he wanted to grab a drink or check something across the room. Then a woman from his department approached us. She smiled politely, looked at me, and said she didn't think she had met me before. I smiled back and told her I was Arlo's girlfriend. The look on her face changed. It wasn't shock exactly, it was confusion. Genuine confusion. She hesitated, then said she thought Arlo's girlfriend had short dark hair. I laughed awkwardly and said I used to have short hair but grew it out. But she shook her head slowly. She said no. She meant a different woman. Someone who had been attending company events as Arlo's girlfriend for a while now. I felt my chest tighten. She described a woman who was shorter than me, with a pixie cut and dark hair. She said that woman had been at the summer picnic just 6 months earlier and introduced herself as Arlo's girlfriend. I turned to look at Arlo. His face had gone completely pale. Before anyone else could say anything, I grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the hallway. I didn't care who was watching. My heart was pounding so loudly I could barely hear my own thoughts. He kept saying there must be some kind of mix-up, that his coworker was confused, but his hands were shaking. I could feel it under my grip. The hallway was empty and brightly lit with harsh fluorescent lights. The sounds of the party faded behind us as the door closed. I demanded to know who the woman was. Arlo stammered. He tugged at his collar like he couldn't breathe properly. He said she was just a friend from his department. Someone who might have gotten the wrong idea. I asked her name. He hesitated. Then he said it was someone named Jasmine. He insisted they weren't together. He said they never had been. He said she must have misrepresented things at work. But nothing about his voice sounded convincing. His eyes kept darting away from mine, like he was searching for an exit. I told him we were leaving. He agreed immediately, too quickly, like he was relieved to escape. As we walked back through the party to get our coats, I could feel people watching us. Arlo kept his hand on my back, but it didn't feel supportive anymore. It felt controlling, like he was steering me again. The drive home was silent at first. Then I started asking questions. When did you last see her? How long have you known her? Why would she tell people she's your girlfriend? He avoided every question. He said he'd explain everything when we got home, that it was complicated, that he needed time to think. His answers sounded rehearsed, hollow. When we finally got inside our apartment, I told him to stop deflecting and tell me the truth. That's when he admitted there was another woman. He said her name was Jasmine and that she worked in his department, but he insisted it wasn't what I thought. He claimed they went on a few dates before he met me and that she got the wrong idea. He said he tried to let her down gently, but she wouldn't accept it. He said she was unstable and had been kind of stalking him at work. Something about his explanation didn't sit right with me. The story kept shifting. Small details changed depending on what I asked. He wouldn't look at me when he spoke. I pulled out my phone. As soon as I opened Instagram and typed her name, Arlo panicked. He told me to stop. He said I was invading someone's privacy. He tried to take my phone from me. I walked past him and locked myself in the bedroom. My hands were shaking as I searched. It didn't take long to find her. Jasmine Westbrook. Her profile picture showed a woman with short dark hair styled in a pixie cut. My stomach dropped. I started scrolling. There were photos of her and Arlo at restaurants I recognized, parks I had been to, company events with people I had just seen that night. The photos went back 2 years. 2 entire years. In every single photo, Jasmine had short dark hair, cut almost exactly like mine used to be. I unlocked the bedroom door and walked back into the living room. Arlo was pacing. I held up my phone without saying a word. I watched his face as his story collapsed in real time. He didn't deny it anymore. He just sat down and put his head in his hands. And in that silence, I understood that my relationship, the one I had spent 3 years shaping myself for, had never been what I thought it was. After Arlo sat down with his head in his hands, the apartment went quiet in a way I had never experienced before. It wasn't peaceful silence. It was heavy, thick, like the air itself was pressing down on my chest. I asked him again how long Jasmine had really been in his life. He looked up and said he didn't know exactly. A few years, maybe? That answer alone told me everything. You don't forget timelines when you're telling the truth. I told him we were leaving the apartment immediately. I didn't want to be there anymore. He nodded too quickly, like he was grateful for an excuse to escape the conversation. As we rode the elevator down, neither of us spoke. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clench them into fists to stop them. Instead of going anywhere familiar, I drove to my friend Rosemary's apartment. I texted her from the parking lot because I couldn't trust my voice. She opened the door in pajamas, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside without asking a single question. She made tea while I sat on her couch trying to explain what had happened. The words came out broken, out of order, mixed with crying. Rosemary didn't interrupt. She didn't rush me. She just listened. When I ran out of words, she set up her guest room and told me I could stay as long as I needed. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't imagine sitting at my desk pretending everything was normal. Rosemary sat with me at her kitchen table while I opened my phone and started making a list. I wrote down everything from the past 3 years that suddenly didn't make sense. Every time Arlo pressured me about my hair. Every work event he said wasn't worth attending. Every weekend he claimed to be working late. Every business trip that now felt questionable. The list kept growing. Rosemary opened her laptop and pulled up Jasmine's Instagram again. This time, we went through it slowly. We didn't just look at the photos, we matched them to dates. She stopped on a photo from last June. Jasmine and Arlo were at a street festival downtown. I remembered that weekend clearly because Arlo had told me he was attending a work conference in Chicago. He had texted me about boring presentations and hotel food. The location tag on Jasmine's photo said the festival was in our city. Then there was a photo from August at a beach 2 hours away. Arlo had told me he was at another conference, this time in Boston. But there he was in the picture, smiling beside Jasmine, building a sandcastle. Every photo lined up with a lie. It wasn't random. It wasn't sloppy. It was planned. I felt sick as the timeline came together. He hadn't just cheated occasionally. He had carefully managed 2 separate relationships for years. Later that afternoon, I reached out to Caitlin, one of Arlo's coworkers, the woman who had spoken to me at the party. We agreed to meet for coffee near his office. I arrived early and ordered tea I barely touched. When Caitlin walked in, she hugged me immediately. She looked uncomfortable, like she had been carrying guilt for a long time. She told me that for the past 2 years, everyone at work believed Jasmine was Arlo's girlfriend. He brought her to every company event, holiday parties, summer picnics, team dinners. She fit in seamlessly. She knew everyone's names. She acted like she belonged there because, in their eyes, she did. Whenever anyone asked about me, Arlo always had an excuse ready. He said I didn't like corporate events, that I was busy with work, that I had other commitments. No one questioned it. Caitlin also mentioned something that made my stomach drop. Arlo always asked about seating arrangements before events. He requested table changes. At the time, she thought he was just picky. Now she realized he was making sure Jasmine and I would never cross paths. She told me there were photos on Arlo's desk at work. Photos of him and Jasmine. She had walked past his desk hundreds of times and never once saw a photo of me. After that meeting, there was no room left for doubt. Back at Rosemary's apartment, I created a fake social media account and searched through Jasmine's posts more carefully. Her account was public. She posted openly about their relationship, date nights, weekend trips, gifts he had given her. Meanwhile, Arlo had always asked me to keep our relationship private online. He said he didn't like mixing personal and professional life. I believed him. Now I understood the real reason. Scrolling further, I found posts about Jasmine's hair. A photo from 3 years ago showed her with long hair past her shoulders. The caption said she was thinking about cutting it short. A few weeks later, there was a photo of her with a pixie cut. The caption talked about how supportive Arlo had been, how he encouraged her, how he said short hair made her look confident and professional. The words were almost identical to what he had said to me. That was the moment everything clicked. He hadn't just controlled my appearance. He had repeated the same manipulation with her. When Rosemary suggested I reach out to Jasmine directly, I hesitated. I was terrified of her reaction. What if she didn't believe me? What if she thought I was lying? But after days of drafting and deleting messages, I finally sent something simple. I introduced myself and asked if we could talk in person. Her response came quickly. She said she didn't understand who I was, because she was Arlo's girlfriend. And that's when I realized something even worse. She had no idea I existed. Jasmine replied to my message within an hour. Her response was short, confused, and offensive. She said she didn't understand who I was, because she was Arlo's girlfriend. She asked if I was mistaken, or if this was some kind of joke. Reading her message, I felt a strange mix of fear and clarity. Fear, because this conversation was about to change everything. Clarity, because her confusion was genuine. Arlo hadn't just lied to me. He had kept us so separate that she truly didn't know I existed. I wrote back calmly. I told her I wasn't confused. I told her I had been dating Arlo for over 3 years and that I had proof. I suggested we meet in person, because this wasn't something that could be explained over text. She agreed, but said she would bring her own evidence too, because she was sure she was his girlfriend and believed she could prove it. We chose a coffee shop that was neutral for both of us. The morning of the meeting, my hands shook as I printed screenshots of text messages between me and Arlo. I printed photos of us together. I printed a copy of our lease agreement showing both our names. Rosemary asked if she should come with me, but I told her no. This was something I needed to face on my own. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose a table in the back corner. I ordered coffee I didn't drink and watched the door. Then Jasmine walked in. I recognized her immediately from her photos. She was shorter than me, with dark hair cut into a pixie style, almost identical to the one I had worn for years. She carried a folder in her hand, just like I did. We sat down across from each other and didn't speak for a long moment. Then, almost in sync, we both started laying our evidence out on the table. Photos, text messages, dates, cards. The table between us slowly filled with proof. She had photos of her and Arlo at a restaurant I recognized instantly. I pulled out a photo of me and Arlo at the same restaurant. Same decor, same tables, different nights. She had a picture of them at a park. I had one of us at that same park. She had texts where he called her beautiful and said he loved her. I had nearly identical messages, with slightly different wording. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Jasmine picked up one of my photos and placed it next to hers from the same waterfront restaurant. The angle was almost identical. She traced the railing visible in both pictures and asked when I was there. I checked the date. August 15th. She showed me her photo. August 22nd. 1 week apart. We had gone to the same place within 7 days, and neither of us had known the other existed. As we kept comparing, more patterns emerged. The same hiking trails, the same coffee shops, the same excuses. Parallel lives running side by side in the same city. Finally, Jasmine asked a question that made everything feel even more calculated. She asked if Arlo had ever mentioned a preference for short hair early in our relationship. I thought back. In the beginning, he loved my long hair. He didn't mention preferring short hair until about 6 months in. Jasmine nodded slowly. She said Arlo told her on their second date that he found short hair attractive. He talked about a former girlfriend who had a pixie cut and how much he loved that look. Jasmine had long hair when they met. Within 3 months, she cut it to her chin. 6 months later, she went shorter. By their first anniversary, she had the pixie cut she still wore. She thought it was her idea. I felt sick. He hadn't just manipulated one of us. He had used the same script on both of us. Same compliments, same pressure, same framing, support disguised as encouragement. Then Jasmine told me how long they had been together. 3.5 years. I did the math in my head. That meant he started seeing her 6 months before he met me. He was already in a relationship when he approached me at that bookstore and told me I looked like a painting. Jasmine went still when I told her I had moved into his apartment 2 years ago. She said he told her he lived with a male roommate named Jar. That roommate was the reason she could never stay over. I realized then, I was the roommate. As we talked, his system became clearer. Jasmine said he always claimed to work late on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those were the nights he spent with me. I realized he told me he had early client meetings on Wednesdays and Fridays. Mornings he likely came from her place. He kept us on opposite schedules. He used work as the excuse for everything. We looked through Arlo's social media profiles together. Most photos were of him alone or with male friends. The few with us were carefully framed, faces partially turned, angles chosen to hide context. He never posted clear couple photos of either of us. He wasn't hiding one relationship. He was hiding both. Then Jasmine told me something that made my chest tighten. 2 years ago, she had a job offer in another state. It paid more, better position, better future. But Arlo said he couldn't do long distance. He said their relationship was too important. She turned the offer down for him. I told her about the promotion I had declined because it required evening networking events. Arlo said it would hurt our relationship. I stayed home on those nights. Those were probably nights he was with her. We sat in silence after that, surrounded by proof of how much we had both given up. At one point, Jasmine said something that surprised me. She said we should confront him together. She checked her phone and said Arlo had told her he needed to work late on Wednesday. I checked my messages. He told me he had a client dinner that same night. We looked at each other. Wednesday it was. Wednesday evening came faster than I expected. At exactly 7 p.m., Jasmine and I stood outside Arlo's apartment door. She held her key in one hand. I held mine in the other. Neither of us had told him we were coming. He thought I was at a work dinner. He told Jasmine he had to stay late at the office. The hallway was quiet. Too quiet. We looked at each other for a long moment. There was no anger in that look, just understanding. Then Jasmine unlocked the door. The apartment lights were on. Arlo's jacket was hanging on the hook by the door. The sound of running water stopped suddenly, and footsteps moved down the hallway. A moment later, Arlo walked into the living room wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair still wet from the shower. He froze. His face went completely white. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Jasmine crossed her arms. I did the same. For a few seconds, none of us spoke. Then Arlo tried to say something about this being a misunderstanding. I cut him off immediately. I told him we knew everything. Jasmine said we had compared timelines, photos, messages, and excuses. There was nowhere left for him to hide. He sat down hard on the couch, like his legs had given out. He put his head in his hands and started crying. Real tears. Shaking shoulders. A performance that might have worked once, just not now. Jasmine stepped forward and began listing things calmly. The summer picnic, where she met his co-workers as his girlfriend. The weekends he told me he was visiting family. The way he kept her away from the apartment on weekends. I added my own list. The company parties he said weren't worth my time. The promotion I turned down because he said it would hurt our relationship. The constant pressure about my hair. How he framed control as preference. When he tried to interrupt, Jasmine raised her hand. We're not done talking. She told him about the lie he had fed her, that I was a stalker, that I was unstable, that he had to protect her from me. I felt a cold anger settle in my chest. He hadn't just lied. He had turned us against each other without us ever knowing. Arlo looked up and said he never meant for this to happen. He said it started casually. He said he didn't know how to choose. He said he loved parts of both relationships and convinced himself he could keep them separate forever. I asked him one question. Why the hair? Why did it matter so much? He wiped his face and said he had a type. Short hair, professional, confident. He wanted consistency. He wanted us to look similar so his fantasy wouldn't break. That answer told me everything I needed to know. Jasmine asked if there were other women. He said no. But he hesitated. That pause said more than words ever could. We told him we were done. Both of us. He jumped up and started bargaining. Therapy. Change. Choosing one of us. Promises layered on desperation. It was disgusting to watch. Even now he thought this was a negotiation. I walked into the bedroom and started packing. Clothes, toiletries, books. Every item I took felt like reclaiming something he no longer had access to. I left the photos behind. I didn't want reminders. When I came back into the living room with my bags, Jasmine was waiting by the door. Arlo was still sitting on the couch with his face buried in his hands. I placed my apartment key on the counter. The soft metallic sound echoed louder than it should have. That was the end. Jasmine and I walked out together without saying another word. In the hallway, we exchanged numbers, not because we were friends, but because we understood each other in a way no one else ever could. Then we went to our separate cars. I drove straight to Rosemary's apartment. She didn't ask questions. She made tea and sat with me while I cried. The days that followed were quiet and strange. Arlo sent long texts, voice messages, apologies, explanations. I listened to a few, then stopped. My sister Gabriella told me something that finally stuck. Every time you listen, you give him power. So, I blocked him. The silence afterward felt unfamiliar, but freeing. I found a small studio apartment across town. It was more expensive, but it was mine. When I stood in the empty space holding the keys, it didn't feel lonely. It felt like possibility. Jasmine reported everything to HR. Arlo's reputation collapsed at work. He was transferred. People distanced themselves. His carefully controlled image shattered. I started therapy. My therapist helped me understand that what he did with my hair wasn't superficial. It was erosion, slowly making me doubt my own preferences until his voice replaced mine. Months passed. I grew my hair out, not as rebellion, but as choice. I accepted a promotion I had once turned down. I reconnected with friends. I learned to say no without apologizing. One day, I caught my reflection in the mirror while getting ready for work. My hair fell past my shoulders in loose waves, but what caught my attention wasn't the length. It was my posture. I looked like myself again. Later, Jasmine sent me a photo. Her hair had grown out too. She was smiling next to someone new, someone who didn't comment on her appearance unless she asked. I smiled back at my phone. We didn't win something dramatic. We won ourselves back.